that dumb saying, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak. It was not worth it for Major League Baseball. And I get it, because baseball doesn't have the same appeal, the same advertising revenue that the NFL or the NBA or UFC. Welcome to episode 268 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench podcast network presented by Playback. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Please help us in our climb to 1,000 subscribers. Just hit the button below this video if you're on the video side. That would really help us out as well. Listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Acast, YouTube Premium. I've had a lot of people tell me actually they listen on all different platforms. So do that as well. Follow the ETB Network Substack, which you and I do Alley-Oop Analytics, which is our NBA video series. And we have a bunch of others, noteworthy in the NCAA, Baseball Bonanza, and a bunch of others. So check that out, etbnetwork.substack.com. It's $5 a month or $60 for the year. I promise you it's worth spending the money. And Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more about what we do with our partners at Playback. Okay, we have a lot to get into in short forms, but we have a lot to get into with some trending topics. First of all, Anthony, how you doing?
Not doing too bad. Definitely getting excited. We're getting closer and closer to March Madness. NBA season is starting to get great. You know, right after All-Star break, that's when the NBA season starts to get really good. So UFC's got some trending things. So it's a great time to be a sports fan.
It is a good time to be a fan. I mean, I know we're out of some of the seasons. Obviously, like we're huge into the NFL. Obviously, the season's over. We find that's why we have other professional sports to look at. But a lot of NBA to get into this week. Victor Wembanyana done for the year. We'll get into that whole thing with the Spurs and how that affects the Spurs. We'll get to the Pistons, who have played unbelievable basketball this year when everybody thought they were going to be a train wreck. And that has not been the case. We'll get into Philadelphia, also who I obliterated the other night on a live stream. Joel Embiid hurt again. Big shocker. Not a big shocker. That's complete sarcasm. Also, ESPN has opted out of its deal with the Major League Baseball TV rights contract. A lot of controversy on that. We will break that down. Again, Justin Tucker allegations, and the GM has now spoken. So we will get into all the allegations and everything that's going on in Justin Tucker's world. Also, a surprise topic which caught me: the Packers petitioned the NFL to ban the Tush Push. Now, you were saying before, is this because they feel they can't do it, or is it really screwing up the NFL? We'll get to that. A lot of UFC announcements. Dana White was busy a couple days ago. So we'll get into that. You'll talk about UFC Fight Night in Seattle, which that's the card that had all the fight changes, right? If I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah, but it definitely had a lot of exciting knockouts, but kind of a disappointing main event, but we'll definitely get into it.
And then Diana Taurasi has announced her retirement. She's one of the better all-time players in the WNBA. We'll get into that at the end of the show. But right off the top, we have NBA stuff to talk about. Victor Wembanyana and Gregg Popovich, head coach Gregg Popovich, out for the season. Now, I'm not a science major by any means. But the name of the diagnosis, is thrombosis, which is a blood clot, which is actually very similar to what Chris Bosh had back in like 2011 or 2012 with the Miami Heat, and it ended his career. His career was over, and he was willing to sign a waiver, and Miami originally was going to go through with it, and then they realized, yeah, we don't want to be the first team to have someone die on the court while playing. So that pretty much ended his NBA career. Now, I don't think it's going to end Victor Wembanyana's career. He's a young guy. But supposedly he's been dealing with some issues with this for quite a few years. And now the Spurs, who had a chance to make the play-in, are probably done officially for the year, because Victor Wembanyana was leading this team and doing a lot of unbelievable things, and now he can't play. What do you think about the thrombosis diagnosis first?
It's definitely very scary. And I mean, for a guy who is potentially the future face of the NBA, and a guy who's been highly touted and probably one of the most, star-studded best guys to watch in the NBA already, only being in his second year. This was definitely devastating, and not even just in a basketball standpoint, but just scary as a human being standpoint. I mean, blood clots are very serious, and those can be deadly, and you definitely got to, take them, with a huge, emphasis and a huge priority, and make sure to get that taken care of. And I think with Victor Wembanyama being so young, but also being so tall, and seeing other tall players who've had similar situations in their career, they want to be extra cautious and, let this get taken care of now. Obviously, yeah, it'd be great to make the play-in tournament, but ultimately they have bigger goals than that for the future. And for Wembanyama, they look at him as their potential star that can lead them to multiple titles. So I think this makes complete sense. I hope he has a full recovery. I know according to the people around him, he does do a lot of preparation. He's kind of like LeBron in terms of taking care of his body. So they kind of do expect this to be an isolated issue. So hopefully that is the truth. And I hope that he makes a full recovery and he comes back next season. For the Spurs, for the immediate future, honestly, it probably helps their draft lottery odds out. Instead of them playing in the play-in tournament or just making or just missing that, they could kind of get into that top 3, top 5 of the draft lottery. Now, even if you don't get a guy like Cooper Flag, if they get the second or third pick, they could get a guy like Ace Bailey, who could kind of be like a wing scorer that they ultimately need. And he's getting comparisons to Kevin Durant. So you got the generational guy in Cooper Flag, but you got some also great players in this draft, and it's a stacked draft class. So it definitely helps them draft-wise. But, man, I hope Wembanyama makes a full recovery. For Gregg Popovich, I think this is way worse and way more scarier. I mean, Gregg Popovich has been in the NBA as long as I can remember. I mean, he's the greatest probably NBA coach in NBA history. He's got the all-time winning record. He's won so many championships. He's been great for so long, but he's been at this for a while, and he is kind of getting to an older age. And with this, they're saying this could turn into a retirement if he doesn't make a full recovery. And given his age and where he's at, I wouldn't be surprised if it does turn into a retirement. And for Gregg Popovich, I mean, he should step down. He's been after this. He doesn't have nothing to prove. He's won enough at this level, and I think he should retire and enjoy the rest of his life.
Now, I think he's in his mid-70s, so he's up there in age. Like you said, he has nothing to prove. I think he's won 3 or 4 titles, so he's done what he's had to do. The only reason he came back was because of Wemby, because they had the chance to draft a generational player for the first time since Tim Duncan. When they had the chance, there was a lot of comparisons there, like when Tim Duncan was taken high in the draft, and now they got Wemby. I guess what I would say to Spurs fans, and they really don't want to hear it, is just you got to let this season go. You got to let this season go. I know, like Spurs fans don't want to hear that to throw away the season, but you're not gaining anything by making the play-in tournament, because you're either going to go make the playoffs and try to make a run, but every other team is better above you. So you're not going to win. You're not going to. So let's just say they win the play-in tournament game, whatever that is. They're not going to win a round. They're not good enough. Even if Wemby was there, it would have been a struggle to win a round. So I think the amount of money and the amount of marketing that they could do on this guy, just let him sit out the season and get better. It's totally worth figuring this out. Pop on the other side, on the other end of it, I think he should just retire. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that he's had his career, he's had his moment. Let somebody come in, run the franchise. Maybe he becomes a what's that popular thing to do? A consultant to the team, which is a big thing now. Let him be part of the makeup of the team. Maybe like assistant to the GM, something. Because he's still brilliant from being a mastermind of building teams. So, again, Spurs fans, look to the future, not now. Your time is not now. It's the next, think like 3 to 4 seasons down the road from now. You'll have the ability. I like De'Aaron Fox. I think that was a really good deal for them. So they have a star point guard to go along with Wemby. Chris Paul's not going to be here much longer. He's going to retire at some point because he's kind of a detriment more than having someone out there. Okay, he can pass the ball, but he can't score. He can't do much else. He can't play defense. So, again, season's over. But I threw the conspiracy theory out there that imagine if they could drop low enough to get Cooper Flagg in the draft, and then all of a sudden you have Wemby and Cooper Flagg along with De'Aaron Fox on the same roster. That would be like almost unfair if they could somehow figure that out, right?
It would almost be like if the Cavaliers got LeBron and Kevin Durant on the same team. I mean, it just wouldn't be fair. I mean, you would get, this generation's 2 generational prospects. I mean, it wouldn't be fair. I mean, the odds of that of happening is slim to none. But man, if it happened, I mean, the Spurs are going to be a potential dynasty, and I mean that would probably be something that would make Gregg Popovich want to keep coaching. But I mean, at the end of the day, the guy's a 5-time champion. I mean, he doesn't have anything to prove, and I know he wants to coach Victor Wembanyama. I mean, maybe he wants to be there for the early part of Wembanyama's career, kind of help out his development. Obviously, that's the most important part is his early couple years. But at the end of the day, Gregg Popovich is not going to really be there when Victor Wembanyama becomes Victor Wembanyama. When he's in his prime in his late 20s, early 30s, there's no way Gregg Popovich is still going to be able to do this in his mid to late 80s. So I think right now, I mean, he's coached him for 2 years, maybe one more season, kind of, do the best you can. But I agree with you, Nick. I think he should step back, become a consultant, take, probably a 75 to 80% workload, spend more time with his family, and just help out the team a little bit, but take like less work. And I think at his point of his career, I think that's what he should do.
And I get it. Like, he's an NBA lifer. That's just what these guys are. Pop will always be an NBA guy for as long as that's all he knows how to do. That's what his career is. Like, when we get used to a career that we really like and love to do, we don't want to stop doing it. We kind of feel lost when we can't do what we like anymore. So I think that's more of what we're really looking at. Likewise, moving around a little bit, going around the NBA a little bit. Let's talk about 2 teams that are going opposite directions. Okay. So let's talk about the Pistons. And we really wanted to do this over the last couple of weeks, but a lot of stories have kind of broken that were large. And let's talk about the Pistons because it's been an incredible run for the Pistons. I think they're the 6th seed right now. So as of this recording, they were the 6th seed. Yeah, the 32-26 as of this recording, and they are 1 game out of the 4th and 5th spot. I mean, Cade Cunningham, I think, is most of that answer. This guy finally figured it out. It took him a little time to get used to the NBA. He looked lost the first couple of years out there. Or let me rephrase that. He did look lost, but the Pistons were not giving him anybody to play with either. So I don't know. Like, it's mostly Cade, right? Why this team is turned around?
Oh yeah, I mean they got some other players of note. Obviously, you got Beasley and Tobias Harris. Jaden Ivey was doing good before his injury, but then he got hurt. You got Jalen Duren, who's a great rebounder and plays great defense and plays hard. They got a decent rotation, but like you said, it's mainly Cade Cunningham is the main guy, and I love Cade Cunningham. He was one of the top, if not the best, player coming out of high school. He went to college and dominated Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State, wasn't this great basketball powerhouse when he went there. And I mean, he took that team super, super deep all the way to the NCAA tournament. So I really love Cade Cunningham. And obviously, early on, I mean, he was a 20-year-old rookie, 21-year-old sophomore who really didn't have much talent around him and played for probably the worst franchise and the worst team in the league at the time. And what he do is he just kept grinding. He never complained. He never demanded a trade. He just kept playing hard and getting better and better each season to the point where his talent and how great he played was just undeniable. And now he's playing so well that he's carrying the team all the way to a top 6 seed. I mean, I know it may be a hyperbole, but I mean, you can make an argument. This guy is a top 10 MVP candidate. I mean, how many players in the NBA, are more valuable than Cade Cunningham? Obviously, there's some players you can name, but is there really 10 or more guys that are more valuable than what Cade Cunningham's doing this year? It would be hard to figure that out.
I think from a solo perspective, because people forget that in sports, like everyone misperceives the most valuable player award, what it means. A lot of people think in all sports that the most valuable player is just the person with the best stats. That's not the case. It's not always the person with the best stats. Does it help when you have the best stats? Yeah. But you have to look at scenarios like that necessarily don't deserve the MVP. Like, look at A-Rod when he was in Texas, when he played for the Rangers. He had 55, 60 home run seasons, but their teams were so far out of the playoffs that does him being an MVP change what they were going to do? It doesn't. So in this scenario, if Cade is not on this team, they probably are a dungeon team and probably going nowhere. Like, they're probably worse than the Wizards.
They're on a 7-game win streak, and Cade Cunningham is averaging over 25 points, like 8 or 9 assists and 6 rebounds. I mean, he's doing it all.
He's averaging close to a triple-double if you look at it from that point of view. And I'm happy for the Pistons, because the Pistons have been a dumpster for like the past, 5 to 6 years at least, where nobody, you get the Piston fans who want to show up and see the games, but is anyone really going to see the Pistons? Or anyone care? And with the whole disaster, I think it was last year, the whole Monty Williams contract disaster, where what did they give him? Like $100+ million, and he walked away after the first season, and now they're stuck paying that contract. And
that's why we got to mention JB Bickerstaff. I mean, that guy was able to take Cleveland to the playoffs. Ultimately, it didn't work out. They kind of got, to a standing point. They had to move on and, find a better coach. But he's a perfect guy to rebuild a team. And he was able to kind of rebuild the Cavaliers up until get to the first round of the playoffs. And then now look at what he's doing with the Detroit Pistons. And he's going to probably get them to the playoffs as well.
Yeah, like I said, I'm happy if the Pistons make the playoffs. They deserve to have a little more national recognition because, again, at the beginning of the season, no one expected the Pistons to be anywhere near the playoffs or even the play-in. They're more than just a play-in. They're a 6 seed. Like, that's actually first-round territory. Like, they're going to play a first-round matchup if they stay healthy and continue to at least win games. But it's good. I'm happy for them because I want to see Cade Cunningham succeed. I think there was a lot of pressure on him coming out of college, if I'm not mistaken. I think he got the Nike deal coming out also, which was a lot of pressure on him. But I'm happy for the Pistons. We'll see where that goes. Now, on the other side of things, the Philadelphia 76ers. What the heck happened to the 76ers? Joel Embiid being hurt, number one, probably is part of it. Paul George being hurt, part of it. I think Tyrese Maxey has missed some time at one point during the season.
Their star rookies missed some time.
So, but the problem is there was so much expectations on this team. Oh, let's go out and get Paul George and put him with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And guess what? We're going to make our own trio. And we're going to go off and win a lot of games. And we're going to make the playoffs. And we're going to win a title. Trust the process, which, by the way, I don't believe in anymore and have not believed in for years. And now they're sitting in 12th place currently with a 20-37 record. And this is probably one of the biggest disappointments I've ever seen.
I mean, honestly, Nick, I mean, it's just like bad timing for the 76ers. I mean, I remember a time where when Embiid was healthy, he was in the second round of the playoffs. And the only reason why they were losing was because they had a guy in Ben Simmons who couldn't shoot at all. And then it just sucks because as soon as Tyrese Maxey became a star, Joel Embiid, his injury started to pile up more and more. He started to not play so well when it came to, playoff games. And then now you bring in Paul George. He hasn't been healthy. And even the games that Paul George has played on, I mean, look at his averages and his stat lines. He hasn't even been playing like the normal Paul George that we're used to playing. So Paul George is not playing like we're used to. He's been hurt. And now Embiid may now have to have surgery. So, I mean, now looking into his future, I mean, he's going to be 30, 31 years old with all these injuries. And when big men start to get hurt, they don't tend to get healthier.
It's true. And I talked about this again on a live stream, which I did the other day. The money goes up every year in the deal. And he just signed an extension. So they canceled out his player option and they gave him a 3-year, 4-year extension for like $215 million on top of what he was making. I don't know what the 76ers were smoking when they were coming up with this contract. But you would say that the 76ers are probably regretting that contract now, right?
Oh, they're definitely regretting it now, but I mean, what other option did they have? I mean, you had a guy who was pretty much a top 3 MVP candidate for multiple years in a row, finally won the MVP, whether if it was controversial or not, he got the MVP. And I mean, he was the guy that you knew, like, man, if he's in the playoffs and he has a second star that could put up some points, you're going to be able to win the East. And then it just so happens is once they got some good players around him, like Tyrese Maxey, he wasn't able to stay healthy. Like I said, Nick, I think it was bad timing, but I don't think they had another option. I mean, you had a guy who was a top 5 player in the league. You had to pay him.
I get it, but you knew he had the leg injuries. You knew he had the injuries. Why would you pay the guy knowing that one bad injury was going to derail another season? That's the one thing I don't get here. And his attitude is a massive issue. I think he got suspended for a couple games, also, if I'm not mistaken. Did he get suspended? I don't even remember. He got suspended for something. I don't remember. But the guy doesn't care about his teammates. He doesn't care about the team. I don't know if he even cares if Philadelphia wins a title.
I mean, he showed some emotion when he lost to the Raptors and Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, but this whole trust the process nonsense is not working in Philadelphia. I think they should give up on this stupid trust the process plan and just say it's not working. We need to figure out a new plan. And your 2 guys that are your stars, one can't stay healthy and on the court. The other one is more worried about his podcast than what he does on the court. And yes, people gave me flack because I went after Paul George and his podcast, and I said he should be more worried about basketball on the court and stop worrying about everything with your podcast. Your podcast will be there when your career is over. Like, it doesn't have to be. And another thing I personally don't understand, all the current players that are doing podcasts while they're in the league. How do you have time to focus on playing well, building a team, trying to win games, but you have time to do a podcast on the side too? Like that'll never make any sense to me whatsoever. I don't think Paul George has ever been fully dedicated, whether it was the podcast or I think sometimes his brain was out to lunch over the years. I mean, they should be building around Tyrese Maxey. That's the guy they should be building around. He is a young stud. The only knock on him is all the injuries that he's had. But if he can stay healthy and on the court, that guy can score 25, 30 points a night.
And I
And
really like Jared McCann, the rookie. I mean, before his injury, I mean, he was averaging almost 15 points a game. So I think with those two guys, I mean, it would make sense. I mean, but obviously, you can't really, start a rebuild now. You're stuck with Embiid for a few more years.
and George, who you just signed.
Yeah.
But George is never going to be the same player ever again because of all the injuries. The same thing.
At this point, the only thing you could do is have, Embiid, options for surgery because this season's a dumpster fire. You're not salvaging this season, so you might as well, cut the season short. Obviously, you got to finish the games, but let Embiid have a surgery. Or any other players that got any other injuries, let them sit out and have their surgeries if they need be. And basically, you kind of have to run it back next year, and hopefully, if everybody can stay healthy. I mean, Nick, if all these players stay healthy and play the way they should, this should be a top 4 team in the East. I mean, heading into the season, I mean, I thought this team could be better than my Cavs team. I'm glad that I was wrong. But I'm saying, and talent-wise, if all these players are healthy, this should be a top 4 team in the East. And they shouldn't even be worried about making the playoffs, let alone worried about making the play-in tournament.
I agree with you, but I think sometimes what happens in the NBA or like any other sport, ego gets in the way of everything. Because everyone said before the season, watch out for the 76ers. Watch out. And they've been saying this for the last, 6 to 7 years. Watch out for the 76ers. They're going to win a title. They're going to do everything. And so far they have this much, 0, to show for it.
Not even an Eastern Conference Finals appearance.
Right. So what makes you and I, who follow the NBA a lot, what makes us believe that the 76ers are going to change now all of a sudden? And by the way, Embiid's going to have to sit out for a year if he has surgery. So it's not only going to be whatever's left of this year. He's probably going to have to miss the first 3 to 4 months of next year, at least, depending on when he gets the surgery. I mean, and then you have to pray to God that the rehab goes well and there's no setbacks.
And then you got to pray that Paul George and Tyrese Maxey and McCann can carry the team enough to keep you at least in the playoffs before Embiid comes back.
I don't know. That just sounds like a lot of trusting the process. I mean, excuse the bad pun, but that's the way I look at the 76ers right now. I mean, I don't see this getting better. I see it getting worse before it gets better. And I don't know if it's worth almost doing like an NFL style cap cut here with Joel Embiid and just saying, you know what? Listen, it's business. It's not personal. I think we need to just make a deal and go our separate ways. It's going to cost them a lot of money because they stupidly just signed a contract extension. But the guy is never going to be the same. He's never going to play back-to-back games. The Sixers have already made that clear that he's never going to play consistent back-to-back games. How do you expect to win any series in the playoffs, let alone any game consistently, if he's never going to play back-to-back games?
Well, one good thing is the playoffs, they don't really do back-to-back games. And honestly, I wish the NBA wouldn't do back-to-back games. I feel like that's bad for the product. And I think they should spread out the games more and not force these NBA players to have to do back-to-back games.
Well, technically you don't see it anymore because now the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs usually go rotating days. So you're never going to see games like that again. But I just meant from the standpoint of stamina.
Oh,
like,
of course.
Joel Embiid can't play back-to-back games. Like, how do you expect him to have enough stamina to go to the playoffs? That's
every
the big
game
issue.
you're playing 40-plus minutes and you're playing your heart out each and every minute. I mean, by the time you get to a 5 or 6 game series and you got to do that 3 or 4 times, I mean, is he going to be able to hold up?
And then all the travel and all that stuff too. Like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But 2 teams go in the complete opposite direction. Pistons on the up, 76ers on the down. Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. Moving on to baseball. And this is not necessarily the product on the field. This is the TV rights. And Major League Baseball has had a lot of problem with TV rights. And now Major League Baseball's up shit's creek without a paddle a little bit because ESPN has ended their relationship with Major League Baseball by opting out after the upcoming 2025 season. They had 3 years left on this deal. It was a 7-year deal, which the sides agreed upon originally in 2021, that averaged $550 million a year. And the long or the short of it is I think ESPN finally came to the realization that baseball doesn't make as much money as a lot of the other sports. Hence, what I told you before the show, that there's a lot of NBA, NFL, NHL comparison contract talks. And if you look at some of the deals, the ESPN is paying up the you-know-what in the new deal with the NBA. They're paying billions to have the NBA rights. Now, is that a good deal? I couldn't really tell you because I think it's like an 11, 12-year deal with the NBA. But just let's take a comparison sake to some of the other deals that Major League Baseball has made. So with that $550 million is more than any other TV partner pays right now for Major League Baseball. Apple pays $85 million. Roku, which most people don't really pay attention to Roku because it's kind of small. But I think you can watch for free on Roku, whatever their schedule is for Major League Baseball. They pay $10 million a year, Roku, compared to the $550 that ESPN pays. So so what do you make of this from a perspective of like ESPN pulling out of the deal?
I mean, when you say that they're paying that much money, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they have a lot of other things that they're paying as well. And, when you look at all the major sports, I mean, a lot of other sports aren't having problems getting TV deals. I mean, the NFL, everybody wants the NFL, and they'll pay whatever they can to get the NFL TV rights. For the NBA, you've seen how much money they got. So you just see, how much, people are willing to pay and how much people really care about basketball and football, and how the MLB, it seems like as the year goes on, they're having less and less of a fan base. I mean, and it's hard for the fans to follow. I think ultimately there's just way too many games, and I think it's hard for the regular fan to follow and keep up with all the stuff that's going on. And I mean, then when you mention about how much money and how much less money all these other people are paying the MLB, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, maybe ESPN wants to renegotiate at a lower price. But if they don't sign with ESPN, I wonder who MLB would sign with.
Yes. So for another contextual point, ESPN has carried Major League Baseball games since 1990. So just doing the math in my head, was that 35 years or so? ESPN and Major League Baseball have worked together for a very long time. So they've done a lot of things. They had the wild card. They had Sunday Night Baseball. ESPN did all of the All-Star weekend, including the Home Run Derby, except for the All-Star game, which went to Fox. And then they would do like 10 to 15 spring training games. So they did a lot of work. But it just, that dumb saying, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, so to speak. It was not worth it for Major League Baseball. And I get it, because baseball doesn't have the same appeal, the same advertising revenue that the NFL or the NBA or UFC
or college
football even, right? That revenue is way bigger than what baseball brings in. And also, people don't want to sit. Even though they've finally put the pitch clocks in and games have been way shorter, it's so much harder to sit through a baseball game than it is any other sport.
And also, too, Nick, I think also the imbalances with the teams. I mean, you got a team like the LA Dodgers who could go on and buy the best player in the whole league and then defer his money. I mean, can you imagine if the Kansas City Chiefs were able to say, you know what, Pat Mahomes, we're going to defer all your money. You can make like $1 million, and we're going to go out and get you like Derrick Henry, and we're going to go out and trade for Myles Garrett. Why even bother watching at that point? And then you got so many teams where you just know they're just so hopeless that they're not going to be able to compete. And I just feel like there's so many imbalances with baseball where, there's so much parity in the NBA and in NFL, particularly in the NFL, that you don't know. You can have a team like the Commanders go from the second worst team all the way to the conference championship. Or in basketball, you get a team like the Pistons, who was an absolute shit show, and now they're a top 6 seed. You don't really get that in baseball.
Right. And the argument that you're kind of leading into, which is what MLB players are against, is the owners and Major League Baseball want to put in a salary cap, which baseball has never been a salary cap sport. There's a luxury tax where if you reach a certain amount, you have to pay out the other teams that are below. But if Major League Baseball had a salary cap, it would change the way things are done. It would change the way that situations are handled. Or you can either put in a salary cap or a salary floor, meaning if you put in a salary floor, it says that all teams have to mandatorily spend a certain amount of money. Because all the low-rung teams like the Tampa Bay Rays or the Pittsburgh Pirates or others that just basically pocket the money rather than spending it, they don't put out a plausible team on the field. And why would you go watch them? No one cares. Like, you'd have to be like a diehard fan of those teams if you're going out and watching those games and buying tickets and parking and spending all that money, buying concessions, whatever. But the baseball product has just been a nightmare. And Rob Manfred, the commissioner of the sport, not great. He's probably one of the worst commissioners out of all the commissioners we have. And I don't, a lot of people are reporting and rumors that maybe ESPN did this to renegotiate the deal, but I think both sides are so like broken emotionally that I don't see this coming back and ever working again. And they're going to be done. They also covered them nationally on radio too. So now they got to find a new national radio home to cover their games. They got to find a new bigger TV partner to be on.
Do you think some streaming services are going to step up and take those rights and negotiate a new contract with them? Because if it's not going to be ESPN, I mean, the only thing I can think of is maybe there's going to be some streaming services because I know they've been really hungry for sports.
I mean, like I was starting to say, I think we were both saying it, like baseball's just a tough watch, even with the pitch clock shortening the games. That was something that Major League Baseball did a really good job of with the pitch clock because it sped up the games. You couldn't step out of the batter's box every time. Like they fixed that and it was making it more watchable because originally games were like 3 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, we all barely have time to do what we got to do. Can you imagine sitting and watching originally a 3 hour and 15 minute or a 3 hour and 20 minute game? No. And I'll give you another example. Yankees Red Sox, which is the biggest rivalry in baseball. Those games were averaging 4 hours. Can you imagine watching anything for 4 hours?
You can watch 2 college basketball games in 4 hours.
Maybe more, depending on how fast they go. So that was an issue. The pitch clock finally got it down to about 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is actually respectable. You could watch something in a little over 2 hours. But I don't know what they're going to do. And so MLB receives an average of $729 million from Fox and $470 million from Turner, which is TBS, because they are some of the games on there. And those deals expire after the 2028 season. Well, the ESPN issue is now kind of pushed their hand. They got to find new TV rights partner and fast.
Yeah, I may not be able to know, and we may not know who it's going to be, but if for damn sure it's going to be less than the amount that ESPN was projected to pay.
Yes and no, depending on if it goes exclusively streaming. Now Amazon has the Yankee games for once a week. I don't really see Amazon getting into baseball, considering they just signed a huge deal with the NBA. They have the NFL, which they're spending $11 billion on. They're spending billions with the NBA. I just don't see them putting baseball in their portfolio at Amazon. Don't get me wrong, Amazon has a lot of money, but I just don't see baseball fitting there because there's a lot of rumors with the Apple deal that not a lot of people even watch on Apple. One, because you have to buy an Apple product just to watch it. And there are some people that don't have Apple products. I know it's shocking, but there are some people that don't have Apple products out there. Not me, but some people. I don't know. This will be interesting to see how this season goes. And it'll be weird not seeing Major League Baseball after this year for the first time since 1990. It was before I was born. I was born in 93. For perspective. So all I've seen is baseball on ESPN. So just take that into context, how long they've been together. I do think you're right. I think it'll be a streamer. I don't know who it'll be. I'm trying to think who's really there if it's not Amazon.
Well, you got Netflix. You got Hulu.
Well, Hulu, it partially belongs to ESPN.
Okay.
So I don't know if that would happen.
Netflix.
I just don't see. That just seems like an odd fit. Baseball to Netflix.
Netflix, Amazon, or Apple. I mean, I don't know who else would be out after that.
Well, they're on Apple. I don't think that deal's going away.
Okay.
But they're on one of them. I don't see them going to Amazon. So they got to figure out something. I don't know what that is, but they got to figure it out.
MLB Network.
Well, they're on MLB Network, but that's their own network. They can't get fired from their own network, even though that would be hilarious if it ever happened. All right, moving on to a story we've been talking about for a while, and it's reared its ugly head again. Justin Tucker's allegations, and now the GM has come out and said that the allegations are, quote, serious and concerning. Thoughts? So, I guess on the original GM quote.
Well, exactly what his quote says. The way that quote makes me feel is serious and concerning. I mean, most of the time they'll say well, no comment, or we'll let the legal proceedings figure it all out. But for them to say serious and concerning, I mean, look at how many allegations out there. I mean, it is serious and concerning, and it's not really looking good for Justin Tucker. And like I said, he's old. He hasn't played that well. He's a kicker. He doesn't make all that much money since he is a kicker. I think it's real easy for Baltimore to kind of cut their ties with them. I mean, obviously, it would be unfortunate if he is innocent, but right now it's not looking too good for him. And like I said, with the position he's in, the Ravens might decide just to move on.
I mean, this is going to be harsh, but I think they should have caught him already, to be quite honest. I understand, you don't want to judge somebody innocent till proven guilty, obviously. But why would you want to deal with all the legal mumbo jumbo and mess that comes along with the whole Justin Tucker allegations? I mean, it is odd that it's first coming out now when this situation took place, 6-7 years ago, at least, or more. Actually, I think it was all the way back to 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. So it was actually more. But they should just cut their losses and move on. And people were saying that he was very distracted towards the end of this past season. We have no idea if it's because of these allegations. Maybe he was going through it. But he looked awful during this whole year. It was very un-Justin Tucker-like that he was missing kicks that were not even in the 50-yard range. He was missing easy kicks.
Oh yeah, I mean, Nick, I mean, you know me, I watch every football game. I try to at least. And you know how many times this football season where I'm sitting next to my family and Baltimore's getting ready to do a kick, and I'm like, oh, it's Justin Tucker, he's gonna make it. I'll go to walk to the kitchen, I find out that he missed. And that kept happening more often than not. So it wasn't the same Justin Tucker. And I mean, he was considered maybe the greatest kicker we've ever seen. I mean, at one point he had, I mean, he still might have it, the highest percentage, kicking percentage, field goal percentage in NFL history. I mean, the guy in his prime was averaging 90% in his kicks. I mean, the guy has what, a 66-yard game winner. So for him to be missing these layup kicks that he never missed, and kickers don't age. I mean, I know he is 34, 35 years old, but he's not a quarterback or a receiver. He's a kicker. These guys play into their 40s. So there was definitely something mentally off with him, and we'll never know the full story. But, I mean, if these allegations are true, and if he knew that they were going to come out, I mean, it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, and it's interesting. So Eric DeCosta is the general manager, the one that got quoted. Quote, I think we're fortunate that the league is doing an investigation. We'll wait as patiently as we can for as much information as we can, and we'll make our decisions based on that. Okay, that's a nice PR way of saying we're in a bad situation and we might need to go find a kicker sooner rather than later. That's basically what that quote is saying. And it's not going to get better. And the allegations are going to keep surfacing. In total, 16 massage therapists from 8 high-end Baltimore area spas have made allegations of sexual misconduct against Tucker, according to the Baltimore Banner, which, by the way, I've never heard of the Baltimore Banner. Like, they're making their name off this story. I've never heard of them. All the incidents reportedly occurred during this sessions from 2012 to 2016, which were Tucker's first 5 seasons. Ravens coach John Harbaugh said the accusations against Tucker are, quote, not what you want to wake up and read. Gee, Mr. Harbaugh, really? Like, no shit? I don't think they know what to do at this point, right?
I mean, they probably feel like, you know, since Justin Tucker has been such a huge part of their franchise for so long, they probably feel like it would be wrong to just cut him without seeing if he is guilty or not. So that's probably why they're just going to let this play out and not cut him. But, I mean, they're stuck in a weird predicament because if you don't cut him, they're going to take so much backlash about this. I mean, I remember when the Bills had Matt Ariza, how much backlash they were taking, and he ended up being proven innocent. And the Bills still weren't able to bring him back, and he ultimately had to go to a different team. This scenario is a little different because obviously Ariza was a rookie. This guy's been a huge part of their franchise and has won a Super Bowl with the team. So I think just because of the fact that he's been there for so long and how much respect they have, they probably won't keep him on the team. But either way, you got to draft a kicker.
Yeah, I mean, or just go out and get a kicker. There's plenty of them out there, right? In my opinion, the kicker is the most expandable position out there. You could go get anybody as long as they can consistently kick. That's why we see kickers move from team to team all year long, because like you said, 1, they don't cost a lot of money, and 2, there's a kicker for as long as you can see. You find one. DaCosta said he had spoken to the League of Baltimore. Is not sure how long the NFL's investigation will take. Investigators for the NFL have been in Baltimore, speaking with some of the women who have accused Tucker of sexual misconduct. Also, according to DaCosta, the Ravens were unaware of any allegations against Tucker until the Banner contacted them. See, I don't believe that for a second. The team had no idea there were allegations against him? Really? Rick, please tell me you think that's a little tough to fathom, that they did not know.
Oh, no, 100% they know. I mean, that team knows everything that's what's going on. I mean, they know it before everybody.
They know when every player, like, goes to the bathroom. And I mean that in jest. They know every move that every player they have under contract is doing. So for them to come out and say they had no idea about the allegations, the charges, it's the biggest load of BS I've ever heard in my life, that they're going to claim ignorance in this process. And like I said, just cut them. Like, let's say that after all the headache, they say, all right, he's innocent. But is the damage already done? I don't know. Would you say the damage is probably already done? I would say so.
Yeah, I don't think there's no coming back from this one way or another.
I mean, his bad kicking is probably most of the reason from last year why he's not playing now. But he would still have a job if there was no allegations. Because it's like you said, oh, it's Justin Tucker. He can kick from 30 all the way out to 65. And
They
I mean
probably
that.
bring in a rookie to maybe compete with him. But now he knows for sure whoever the guy they do bring in, like you said, they sign a veteran, you know that he's going to be the starter.
Right. So we'll have to, again, I'm going to have to say the same thing I said last time. Like, the jury is out until we know what the actual allegations come to be and if they're proven guilty or innocent or whatever. But what I will say is it's bad. The allegations are bad. And for the GM to make a statement, like you said before the actual legal proceedings happen, that rarely happens. It just doesn't happen. So TBD, to be determined on what actually happens. And we'll be back to this story again because we're gonna have to give you all the updates on when they officially decide what to do with him. So, all right, more NFL. This one's more funny. The Packers petition the NFL to ban the Tush Push. You chuckled a little bit when I read it to you. I laughed when I saw the headline. I'll let you react first because you actually chuckled when I read this headline to you. So, what do you make of the Packers trying to basically petition what the Eagles are doing?
I think it's just comical at this point. And at the end of the day, I mean, everybody could do the tush push. It's not like it's only the Eagles that could do that play. I mean, the Packers are more than likely, more than happy to go out and do the play as many times as the Eagles does. It's just the problem is that the play was so easy. Then how come every team can't execute the way the Eagles do it? There's a reason why the Eagles make it at a high 80%. And why the Bills make it in the high 70%, and why every other team is much lower than that. I mean, you have to have a good offensive line. You got to have a strong quarterback. So it does take some skill to it. Obviously, when you have a strong quarterback and a strong offensive line, yeah, is it almost impossible to stop? Yeah. But you have to have those things. So you have to build a good team and a strong offensive line to even have a prayer at that. So I think it's comical that the Packers want to, have a ban because, if you hate it so much, then why don't you try to execute it yourself? And I just think that they're a little salty that the Eagles beat them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe it's a little jealousy watching the Eagles win a title. And maybe the Packers are just upset because Jordan Love has not come through to the high-flying colors that the Packers were thinking. But the Eagles are just great execution-wise at a play that's legal, by the way, unless they listen to one team. Now, let's be clear. This happens all the time in the NFL offseason. Like, you get teams that petition rules to be changed, and some get changed and some don't. And this would just be laughable if they said, oh, well, the Packers don't like the tush push. Let's put it up for a vote. And the way it works is you need 24 out of the 32 teams in a majority to vote down this rule. I don't even know if I would call this a rule, to be quite honest. I think it would just be voting a play out of the playbook, so to speak. And this is silly. I mean, I don't love the Eagles by any means. Maybe that's just because I'm a New York fan, so I'm not going to like Philadelphia as much. But I can't take it away from them. They execute the play better than anybody I've ever seen. So I think the Packers are being stupid. Like, just what would the Eagles do if they didn't have the tush push?
Yeah, I mean, they would have to do a lot more sweeps and a lot more handoffs to Saquon Barkley. But I don't see the NFL doing this. They're not going to take a play out the playbook just because one team could execute it better than the other. Then, I mean, where do we stop at that point? Then we can start bringing up a bunch of other plays that we should outlaw. So, I really don't think that the NFL is going to, make any, ban on this. And the Packers are just going to have to petition it, have it get rejected, and then just deal with it.
By the way, the numbers you were talking about before, because I think you had said the Eagles and the Bills are the most successful at it. So the Eagles and Bills have scored a touchdown or achieved a first down on 87% of their attempts using the play, while the rest of the NFL has been successful on just 71%. So you're right. Those two teams really execute. But you made another good point before we started saying, look at the two guys who are executing quarterback-wise for the tush push. Josh Allen is a huge beast, muscle-wise and weight-wise, and probably squats a lot like Jalen Hurts. And if I'm not mistaken, you said Jalen Hurts squats 500 pounds at times. So those two can handle taking the hits going through the tush push. I can't think of very many others. Can you that would be able to handle it?
Yeah, there's not too many. I mean, some older quarterbacks like Cam Newton and stuff, but like maybe Trevor Lawrence is a tall guy, but he's kind of slender. Same with a guy like Justin Herbert. So even the taller guys are somewhat slender. I think Anthony Richardson is probably a guy that could do it. I mean, Anthony Richardson's 6'4", 240.
I'd be afraid of him getting hurt.
But the problem is he has the injury issues, so you got to worry about that as well. You got to have a quarterback that's also durable, like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen.
I'd be afraid with Justin Herbert also with all the injuries. I don't know if I'd want those guys exactly running through the middle of the offensive line to try to score a touchdown or get a first and get hit. But this whole thing is silly. Like, just adjust. Learn how to do the tush push. It works. I don't love it myself, but not because only one team can do it. I just don't like it because it looks very odd, and it's an odd play call. Like, and your quarterback, if you mess up the tush push, your quarterback could get hurt really bad. Like, because they're in the direct line of fire by the defensive line if they don't cover the D line as they're running through. But that's the reason why they won the Super Bowl. Or not directly winning the Super Bowl, but got them to the Super Bowl so that they could play and beat the Chiefs up, because they convert, like I said, 87% between the Bills and the Eagles. They convert better than any team on the tush push. So I don't know. It's a dumb rule essentially, and it's going to get rejected and shut down. And then the Packers will go cry on TV and on radio and the media. We didn't get our way. Well, then don't do something so stupid. All right. Now, moving on to the UFC, we got a couple things here. UFC Fight Night in Seattle. Now, I didn't get to watch this one as much, but I know that the card got completely flipped over. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, there was a lot of fight changes, a lot of guys who got injured, a lot of fights who got moved from this to UFC 313. I mean, ultimately, for the most part, the card did deliver. There was a lot of finishes, a lot of TKOs. I mean, ultimately, as a fight fan, that's what you want to see. The main event was disappointing, though. I mean, it ended early, and ended up having to go to a scorecard due to a really severe eye poke. Now, I think Son Yudong should have been at least deducted a point. It was a very, very bad eye poke that involved two of his fingers going in both of Henry Cejudo's eyes. And he basically said, like, I can't see. I mean, I'm not going to be able to see the guy throwing punches at me. So it made sense for them to not continue to go to the scorecard. They want to do a rematch. But, with how Son Yudong was winning that fight before the eye poke, Dana White's not really interested in that rematch. And it's unfortunate because Henry Cejudo is a little on the older side, and he's looking, to go out on top and maybe at least end his career on a win. He said he wants to fight one more time and then retire, so we're probably going to look to see him one more time. Overall, the card was, like I said, pretty good. I thought Anthony Hernandez stood out. He showed his all-around game with his striking and grappling and put Brandon Allen in a lot of bad positions. I thought Rob Font was able to shut down an upcoming contender. Same with Alonzo Menafield. The last thing I want to say is the guy who was the most exciting was Gene Silva. He's this little featherweight guy who could fight at featherweight and lightweight. Most likely he likes to fight at featherweight. But the guy is so exciting, and when he's on the feet, I mean, he could dice it up and knock out anybody. I mean, he's toying with guys, and I mean, he's a rising star. And I'm not sure if you saw it, Nick, but he called out Bryce Mitchell. He said he wants to be the guy that Dana White books on him so he can finally give him some payback and revenge for those comments that he made. And I mean, if Bryce Mitchell decides to fight Gene Silva will put him to sleep and will definitely hurt him and make him regret those remarks he made.
Yeah, Bryce is an interesting guy. Just from the comments alone. By the way, that was his first and only podcast episode, and it was never heard from again. By the way, but interesting fight night in Seattle, and then after the fight night, Dana White just decided to go on an announcement spree for UFC 314 and UFC 315. I saw a few of these. Obviously, the one that stands out to me is Chandler and Patty Pimblett, which I told you I thought was very interesting from a personality versus personality standpoint, because those two guys are probably the best at talking a big game more than anybody else. So what? Well, I'm curious what you think of that fight.
Oh, I think it was a great matchmaking by UFC and Dana White. I mean, you got two highly marketable guys that the fans love to see. Like you said, they're going to be amazing in the press conference. You got a guy in Michael Chandler who's coming off of a couple losses, who's a little on the older side. You got a guy in Patty Pimblett who's on a tremendous win streak, who's a rising contender. So it makes sense for both these guys to fight. And I think this was a great main event, which is going to set up one of the best cards of the year. I mean, this UFC 14 card is stacked. I mean, you got Alexander Volkanovski, who's going to fight Diego Lopez for the vacated 145 belt. I mean, that's going to be a tremendous fight as well. You got Patricia Pitbull, who's now making his UFC debut against Yair Rodriguez. This is a guy who a lot of people was wanting to see in the UFC for a long time, and a lot of people didn't think it would ever come true. Well, it finally did, and he's got a very exciting matchup. One thing that stood out, though, what this means is that means the great Ilia Topuria is going to move up to 155. You know, he knocked out Volkanovski, he knocked out Holloway. So he feels like, you know, after beating the two best guys in the division, he has nothing less to accomplish. He can't make the weight anymore. So now he wants to challenge the pound-for-pound king, Islam Makhachev. Now, that would be Islam Makhachev's toughest matchup and would obviously be the toughest matchup for Ilia. I think that would be one of the biggest fights the UFC could possibly make. It would probably pretty much the winner of that would be the pound-for-pound king. And I would love to see that because I think Islam Makhachev doesn't really have any exciting contenders since he pretty much has wiped out his division. So I think Ilia Topuria, who can knock out anybody and can grapple, you got two guys who are all around. One last thing I'll say is UFC 315 was announced. We're going to have Bilal Muhammad defending the welterweight 170 belt against Jack Del Maddalena. Now, it was supposed to be Shavkat Rakhmonov, but he's still dealing with some injuries. So it comes Jack Del Maddalena. Now, this is going to be an exciting matchup as well. He's on a good win streak. He TKO Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad, who can't be stopped as well. I think Bilal Muhammad would be, you know, obviously a huge favorite, but this is a very exciting matchup as well.
So my question about the weight, because you mentioned that, who was the one that changed weight that you just mentioned? Does that have anything to do with the rule change that Dana White put in that you can no longer hold two belts?
So Dana White clarified that. He said it's not a rule where you can't have two belts. But what he wants us, though, is whatever belt you have, every weight class should have at least their champion defending their belt twice. Now, UFC fighters only like to fight, you know, the really good ones, only like to fight 2 times a year. And he basically said, well, if you want to be a double champion and have both your belts simultaneously, you're going to have to be very active and be fighting 4 times a year because you got to defend each of those belts multiple times. Because what he doesn't want is having a guy with 2 belts and you're holding up one division for a whole year to defend the other one. So that's why I think if you're a guy who wants both belts, you're going to have to be very active. If not, you're going to probably see more fighters vacate the belt and just move up in weight. But for Ilia Topuria, it's not because of that at all. He just can't make the weight anymore, and cutting down to 145 when he walks around at 185 is becoming too hard for him, and he just wants to be at 155 because it's a much easier weight cut in his health.
So who is, because I did hear someone vacated their belt, like to help the scheduling process. I don't remember who that was.
So Ilia Topuria was the one who vacated the belt. He was there were still in negotiations on what his next fight was going to be, and they didn't know exactly what he wanted to do. He decided to vacate his belt now so that you could have Volkanovski and Diego Lopez fight for the belt instead of holding up multiple people.
Got it. Okay. Because when he said it originally, I said, okay, it kind of does make sense that someone shouldn't hold 2 belts at the same time, because that's holding a weight class hostage, so to speak. At least the way I heard it. But one last thing, because we got to wrap this up. The whole Chandler thing is interesting to me because obviously he's going around on all the shows, including Ariel Helwani's show, and saying, like, I'm waiting for Conor to come back. And my head just went like, ugh, like, enough. Like, When are you going to let it go? That it's probably not going to happen. Like, unless this is him like using it as motivation to get through all his fights, to say, if I just keep going after Chandler, then I'm going to get myself aggressive enough to win a fight.
I think he's hoping that maybe he could piss off Conor McGregor to finally coming back. I mean, he's basically saying some stuff about like integrity, like basically saying like, do you want to be the guy who ended getting TKO, breaking your leg against Dustin Poirier, and then signing against to fight me, and then never fighting me again and walking away and being scared? Or do you want to actually come back and fight me and make the greatest comeback in UFC history? So I think he's just trying to motivate Conor to ultimately fight him.
My opinion is I don't think that fight ever happens. Just even though I think Dana White and the UFC are going to do everything in their power to try to make that fight happen. And I think Chandler, who spews a lot of BS when he's talking in the media, but I think the one he was right about was that he's like, well, we both signed on the dotted line for the Ultimate Fighter season, and we were supposed to fight at the end, and it never happened. That one I agree with him on. Like, if you agreed to do a fight, you should do a fight. You should have a fight and hold your word when you're going to fight. But I think you made a good point earlier before we started also that unfortunately, I think Dana White kind of likes Conor too much, even though I beg to differ and wonder if that has changed over the last couple of years, if he's angry at Conor for how he handles some of this stuff. And
honestly, I think at this point, whether McGregor fights or not, I think just the thought and the idea of him fighting makes Dana White exciting because it's newsworthy. And with them negotiating a new TV deal, knowing you still got McGregor on the roster, that could be a part of the negotiation rights. Like, hey, McGregor's going to come back. We're going to schedule this huge fight. And I think that's just something Dana White likes to have.
And I guess the last question I'll ask is basically, how is it not a conflict of interest with bare knuckle fighting that he is signed? He is still signed for 2 more fights with the UFC. If I'm not mistaken, you would know that answer better than me. I think it's a 2-fight deal. Or it was a 3-fight deal, which has 2 left on it. And how is Dana and TKO, which now owns UFC, or the brand that owns UFC and WWE, why are they not saying, F you, you're destroying us? Like, you're not allowed to do any of this. Why are they not doing that?
I think because what they do is when there's a couple other fighters, like you've seen Jorge Masvidal had his fighting promotion.
I like him.
I think what it is I don't think Dana White minds you having a fighting promotion or being a part owner or being involved. I just don't think he wants you to actually fight in it. I think if it comes down to when McGregor wants to actually fight in it, I think that's when Dana White's going to step in and be like, no, listen, you're going to fight in UFC next, not somewhere else. So I don't think he minds having any ownership or talking or being in the rumors or being in the news. But I think if it comes down to the dotted line, I don't think he's going to be happy if McGregor signs a dotted line to fight somewhere other in the UFC.
And that's what I'm talking about. That's like a conflict of interest situation where you're like, wait a minute, how do you have ownership in another promotion? You might be fighting. Now, I don't know if there's a loophole technicality because it's boxing and not like actual UFC combat, but
it'd be like if LeBron James, who still played in the NBA, owned a league overseas.
Oh, like that story we had talked about a couple weeks ago.
He did it while he was still currently playing.
Which I think he would wait until afterwards to do all his ventures. If you look at it, not that he really needs the money by any means, but I don't know. I just find it fascinating that Chandler's all over the media, basically saying, "Come on, Conor, get off your ass and fight me." And Conor's probably laughing behind the scenes in Conor McGregor fashion, basically saying, I already made my money. Who are you? Like, what money have you made? Now, I don't know. Has Chandler made decent money? I don't even know.
Oh, yeah. I think even though he didn't get to fight McGregor, I think his fight against Charles Oliveira and his next fight coming against Penny Pimmel will be definitely highly paid.
Okay, so, like, he's not poor by any means is the point that I'm making. So this is more a battle of the egos, essentially, than business. But we'll see what happens. But that'll do it for this episode of Empty the Bench, episode 268. Make sure you follow us on social media for Empty the Bench at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at ETB Sports. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Please hit the like and subscribe. If you're watching on the video side, go right below this video and hit the subscribe button. It helps us out. Listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts. If you can't watch the video side, we are on all audio platforms. So pick your audio platform of choice and listen away. Also, ETB Network Substack. Make sure you check out our show, Alley Oop Analytics, every Thursday. We have a good one this week. I'm not going to spoil it. Just it might have to do with a certain somebody being traded to a big market team. I'll leave it at that. So check it out and check out all the other ones. Noteworthy of the NCAA, Baseball Bonanza, Unnecessary Wagers, Weekend Winners. We have a lot. So just go check it out. And Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. We appreciate everything they do, all the streams we're doing. NBA, we're doing a lot of now. There's some other stuff in the works, MLB games. So just check all that out when you can. So that'll do it for this episode 268. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. We will see everybody next week.